All right, so today we're going to look at section 5C, time zones and time differences. Time across the globe is generally equated with lines of longitude. Okay? In other words, you have the Earth, time zones. All right, 0 degrees meridian, which is the prime meridian, right? And then they go on from there. Yeah? Now, and the further you get from that prime meridian, then it's the more degrees. You also have to remember that they go east and they go west. Yes? So make sure which side you're on. It's really important that you understand where you are on the planet so that you can make this process work. Okay? Now, two different things about finding time and finding time zones. And the first thing that we want to talk about is when we're trying to find time zones using latitude. If you have a number line where the prime meridian is in the center, this is the easiest way to deal with this. Don't look at the way the book does it. It makes it much harder. On one side, you're going to have 12 time zones. Because think about it. The Earth spins around once every, 24 hours, right? So if you start in the center, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 time zones. Okay? And on any number line, if you move to the right of 0, those numbers have a sign. What is the sign if you're moving to the right of 0? They're positive numbers on the number line, right? Okay? So, there's an opposite set on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And because these are to the left of 0, then you get negative numbers. Yes? So if you're moving east, time is getting greater. In other words, more time has passed the further east you are. If you're moving west, then it's earlier, right? Makes sense? So think about, for example, Brisbane is to the east of Perth, right? And how many hours difference are there between Brisbane and Perth? Anybody remember? 3. So if it's noon, 12 o'clock p.m. here, then what's going to happen here is, so if it's 3 o'clock p.m. here, went the other way, then that means it's noon in Perth. Right? There's a 3-hour difference. And because we're going west, it's 3 hours earlier because the sun travels in this direction, right? From east to west. Make sense? We know this about time. We may not have thought about time as a number line, but there it is. Okay? A couple of other things that we want to know, that you will want to know, is that if it's 1 p.m. on 35 degrees west, then it's 1 a.m. at 180 minus 35 degrees. In other words, the opposite side. So what's 180 minus 35, all of you calculator people that I've already told you to bring your calculator? Pardon? 145. Okay. So if you have opposite sides have opposite times, you could use that information to get yourself a starting point, and then you could move from there. And that's one way of determining time differences. But there's a much more efficient way using the number line and using your calculator. Okay? Now, before we do that, though, we want to talk about one other fact of time. And that is, for every 15 degrees, in longitude, oops, I can't spell. So every 15 degrees in longitude, that equals 1 hour. So if you travel at 15 degrees in longitude, you've traveled for approximately 1 hour. Right? And that's just simply dividing the 24 by the number of longitude lines there are, the number of degrees in a circle. Now, which means that we can use this information to find time at a certain point of longitude. We're going to look at some examples of these as well. Also remember that if it's true one way, then it's true the other way. Okay? So to find time difference, between 2 points where longitude is known, okay, your first job is to see, are they on the same or different sides of the prime meridian? And again, we need to know if they're on the same or different sides because just like those angles for those circles we were dealing with, if they cross, then you want all of that area, right? So you were doing what to the numbers? Adding them. If they're on the same, then you only want this little area, which means you're going to be what? Subtracting them. So you need to know if they're on the same or different sides of the prime meridian. All right. Now, so what you're going to do is simply add or subtract them, and then take that amount divided by 15, and that will tell you the number of hours. And we're going to look at several examples of these, right? So we'll look at several examples of these to be able to work out from longitude. Okay? All right. But again, this is easier still to use if you'll use a number line even for these. So say, for example, we have a number line. Here's 0. I have this point, which is at 30 degrees east. I have this point, which is at 60 degrees west. And I want to find the time, the time difference between them. Do they cross the prime meridian? Are they on opposite sides of the prime meridian? Yes. Therefore, I will add or subtract them. Okay? So I'm going to take 60 plus 30, which gives me 90. And that means that the total angular distance there is 90 degrees. If that's the case, then every 15 degrees is 1 hour. So all I have to do is divide that 90 degrees by 15. Will somebody divide 90 by 15 for me, please? So these two distances are 6 hours apart. And that's how easy it is. Right? Now, Unfortunately, you have to memorize the divide by 15 part. It's not on your formula sheet. Okay? All right. So using a number line is a very good tool for working with these. Because if they had both been on the same side, then you would have to subtract them because you only want that smaller piece. But that shouldn't be a stretch for you because it's exactly what we've been doing when we were dealing with the angles for the great circles and the small circles. Okay? Now, there is another case, and that's when we're given the degrees of longitude for two different spaces, and we don't want to know how much difference there is in the time between the two. Instead, this time we want to know if it's a certain time in one of those places, what time is it in the other? And again, we can go back to that number line that I drew and answer those questions. To find time in one location, given time in another. Okay. Pause for a moment because I'm going a little fast there. Okay. We good? Okay. Then, divide by what number? There you go. And that's going to give you how many hours? Right. Now, again, when you're traveling in different directions in hours, make sure you remember that when you're going along your number line, if you're going east or you're going west, if you're going east, you're going to add. But that makes sense because that's the positive direction. It's going to get later and later the further you go east. Okay? If you go west, you're going to subtract. But again, that makes perfect sense because that's the negative side of the line. So you just need to know how many hours difference, and you're going to count those hours out. Either you're going to subtract them from your original time, or you're going to add them to your original time. And you can do this with your calculator. Your calculator can do time calculations. Right? So the addition and subtraction. There's one thing that you have to watch out, though. You need to watch for the international dateline. Because if you cross that date line, then not only has your time changed, but what? The day. Okay? You also have to watch out about crossing midnight. Say, for example, it's 1 a.m. somewhere, and we subtract 3 hours. If you subtract 3 hours from 1 a.m., you've gone to midnight, then 11, then 10 p.m. on what? The previous day. Okay? So because your answer can be on the previous or next day, depending on which direction. So you've got to be careful about crossing midnight. If you cross midnight by subtracting, then that means you're going to the previous day. But if you cross midnight by adding, that means you're going to the next day. Right? If you cross the international date line, then you're in the next day. Does it make sense? All right. So there's a lot to be thinking about here, but it's not difficult, especially if you keep that number line. It's just like the others. If you make that drawing, you know exactly what it is you're looking for. So let's just look at a couple of examples of these.